Hey there, today we're going to cover an exact slide inspection form. It's going to have a series of questions to have you verify the way the room's sealing and operating, and it'll also ask you part numbers, the coach, make, model, and year, things like that. What we're covering today is just what we're asking for on each one of these descriptions of the slide function, ensuring that it's functioning properly, and then giving it a check mark whether it's compliant and it is doing what it's supposed to, or fail or deviation if it's not doing what we're asking it to do. A dealer may be asked to fill out one of these if they've got a new coach that came in and it's having some issues. We want to ensure the installation process was done properly. All right, so our first item on the list is going to be retract the room, validate that it has even seal compression around the perimeter of the room. So for the exact slide, we're going to go ahead and operate the room all the way out. Hold the button until the room is all the way extended. And then we're going to verify that our standoff brackets are touching the extrusion, top and bottom, on both sides of the room. Once we've validated that, we move on to the next item on the list. Our next item on the list is validate the interior standoff brackets to confirm that they're within 1/8 up to 1/4 of an inch away from the back of the fascia board. And how we're going to determine that, typically, this is a trainer mock-up coach, but you would have a fascia board and a header board coming across the top. We're going to inspect and ensure that this standoff bracket interior is spaced evenly, either 1/8 or up to 1/4 of an inch away from the back of the fascia board. In most cases and scenarios, the bracket itself will actually be pinned up against the back of your fascia board. You're going to want to make sure that that spacing is the same distance on this bracket and it matches to the other 3 corners of the slide out. If one's back further, that means that corner is touching and sealing, and that could be tricking the controller into thinking the room is in a fully sealed position when truly it's not. The bracket is too far back and it's touching first before the other 3. Next, you have validate that the top and bottom interior standoff brackets are aligned vertically on both sides of the room. You can run the room back in for this and get an eye visual on either side of the slide box. What we're saying is we want to make sure that this bracket is straight up and down and that it's not mounted at an angle one way or the other to where the top or bottom of the bracket is making contact first and then the bottom or top wouldn't, depending on the angle of the standoff bracket. Do that to all 4 standoffs. Next, it'll ask us to pull back on the wipe seal on the left and right side of the room to validate that there is even reveal. What we're looking for on the exact slide, and the same for our AccuSlide, is pull back the seal, and we're looking for a 5/8 inch gap from the glass to the extrusion, from the top to the bottom. And that should be that way on the other side of the box as well. If it's not, the box, one, may not be centered in the opening, or there might be a not a square issue. Next, verify that the jam clamp is secured into the channel of the jam on the left and right hand side of the room. Your jam clamp is locked in, kind of like tongue and groove flooring, into the back of the jam, and it should be seated all the way from the top all the way down to the bottom, locked into that jam, then screwed to the interior wall. If it's not, this could be something that is causing some of the issues with the coach. Verify it, check it if it's compliant or if there's a deviation and it failed. At any given time on this list, if there's any additional information, there is an area at the bottom or next to each description that we're asking for that you can go ahead and add some notes to it as well. Next on your list would be confirm that there is, or verify that there is a cable adjustment label installed on the wall near the slide. Your cable adjustment label sometimes won't be on the wall right above the slide out. They have been known, some of the OEMs, to just throw it in the shipping paperwork, or they'll put it to the back side of your header fascia board to where once you remove the board to gain any access, it's on there. Next would be confirm that there is a washer, a coupling nut, and a jam nut on all interior cable ends. At each interior standoff bracket location, you will have an adjustment stud. There should be a flat washer, a 3/8 coupling nut. This is our extended shaft adjustment nut, but it could be a solid one in there as well. And then you should have on top of that a jam nut. It's a 1/4 free running nut. Verify cable tension with the room fully retracted. The room should be all the way in to verify this. If you have one of our tension gauges manufactured by BAL, this takes the guesswork out of the cable tension for you. You can use that to verify proper tension on the cables. We're going to retract the room all the way in. And if you do not have a gauge, you can simply grab a hold of the top cable, up and down 1/2 inch of deflection. Somewhere in the middle of the cable, you shouldn't need to hang on it. Just grab it in the middle with 2 fingers, push up, pull down. Bottom cables would be 1/4 inch deflection. They're going to be super tight. If you have the gauge, at this time you could go ahead and add your tension gauge to ensure proper tension. Once again, this is a trainer mock-up. This has been messed with several times. So in this instance, our location would be off, or our cable tension for our top cable. That should have a little bit more tension on it to align those 2 indicators for top cable. Same with the bottom. So you can use the tension gauge if you have it. If not, revert back to just grabbing the cable and feeling for 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch deflection. While the room is being extended, validate the interior standoff brackets are not flexing. It's pretty standard, not so much for the top, but for the bottom standoff brackets to flex up to about 1/4 inch due to the amount of tension that we're putting on those cables to ensure that you're getting a nice tight seal in the fully retracted and extended position. So what they're asking here is just operate the room. Are we seeing any deflection out of that bracket? At this point, we are not. But if we've seen up to 1/4 inch either way of that bracket flexing on the box, that would be acceptable. Any more than that could potentially be signaling an issue, whether self-tapping screws were used on the interior standoff brackets or there wasn't any wood backer in the inner tubes, the aluminum tubes in the wall. Next, they want us to extend the room all the way out. And similar to your very first line on this inspection sheet, just double check and verify that the brackets are making contact with the extrusion. For some of the other things that we're going to ask for, we're going to go to the outside of the coach. All right, some of the next things that it's asking for us to do is validate that the exterior standoffs are between 1/8 and 1/4 inch spacing from the back side of the T-molding. There are embosses at the top and bottom of those outside exterior standoff brackets, and those should be touching the back side of your T-molding. Ensure that all 4 exterior standoff brackets at each corner of the slide box are remaining at that same distance away from the back of the T-molding. It's also going to ask if we can validate that the rubber grommets are being installed in those exterior standoff brackets. That rubber grommet is just a little black rubber grommet. These can end up dry rotting and falling out, so make sure that they're there. And all it's doing is closing off that keyhole that the ball end of the cable slides into to ensure that the ball end of the cable can't pop back out of that standoff bracket. It just wedges in there and conforms to both sides of the standoff bracket. Validate that the top and bottom exterior standoff brackets are aligned vertically on both sides of the room. Just as the interior, we want to ensure that the brackets are mounted straight up and down and that the top or bottom aren't kicked further away from the T-molding. They're both touching, top and bottom of the bracket, that we're not kicked it back at an angle on the bottom or kicked back on the top. They're nice and straight. Next, we're going to identify the location of the controller. Locating the controller can be a difficult task. We don't know where the OEMs are putting them. 9 times out of 10, they're usually in a pass-through. They're very seldom right next to the slide out itself. You can contact the OEM, ask them if they know where they're putting it, give them the make, model, and year of the coach. That would be beneficial. Or listening for that pop reset on the control box and trying to locate it that way as well. Some of them have, like I said, most of them have been through like pass-through areas, screwed to the wall or screwed to the bottom of a bed or something like that inside there. Very, very seldom is it right next to the slide. So in this case, we're going to go back to the inside of the coach. Ours is right next to the slide for this trainer mock-up unit. Now, our control box is located right here next on the wall, right next to the slide, just for easy access and for training purposes. Next, it's going to ask you to, by using the controller, press each red button individually and confirm that it does retract the room. If the OEM does wire this up properly, there are 2 red buttons, one on either side of the control box. And this is part of your bypass override option. If you lost power from your switch to your controller or lost power to the coach completely, you could power the box up, alternate 12-volt supply, and manually run the room in off these buttons. Right side should be dedicated for the right side of the room. That would be standing inside the unit looking out. And left for the left side. Don't fret if that doesn't run the room in. Sometimes the polarity at the M2 and M1 have been flip-flopped during the wiring process, and what it's trying to do is extend the room versus bring the room back in for you. Simply flip-flop the M2 plus and minus, the M1 plus and minus, hit the buttons again. That should go ahead and pull the room in. However, you will need to go to your switch and change your in and out wiring on the switch itself as well. Identify the glide surface type and indicate quantity if there are rollers installed. You'll need to do that from the outside of the coach unless it's a solid core wear bar design, where you can usually see that. I can show you on another different slide here. Down at the bottom, this has a solid core wear bar design, and it usually sticks out past the slide out box on either side of the floor. If it is rollers, go to the outside of the coach, the underside of the room, and you should be able to gain access. There may be a wipe in the way. Fold it down if it is, and inspect and see if there are rollers in there. Obviously, if it's a flush floor, you'll be able to see the pan at that point as well, and you can indicate that it was a flush floor style. Cycle the room in and out completely 3 times to confirm successful operation. So you cycle the room 3 full cycles, all the way in, all the way out is 1. And just ensure that the room is functioning and you have a good seal on the outside of the coach as well as the interior on all 3 cycles. The room's not stopping in between the cycle on you, which could indicate a resistance issue, whether that be the glide surface or physical or electrical resistance. This room is running just as it should. And then water management at the end. We don't have anything here for you to select, but it is a good thing. The application of sealant cannot be inspected. Gaining access to some of the areas that were supposed to be sealed up prior to the installation of the mechanism at the OEM, you may not be able to look at, so we don't have an area for that. But there are some key points and key areas that can be checked, and we'll refer you to BALRVProducts.com. Click on the support tab, then the download drop down, and then go to either Exact Slide or AccuSlide and our supplier quality guidelines, and there is an area in there for sealant. And inspect those areas and ensure that we're not getting any water infiltration.